Just as our hopes were high for a better year as we closed the books on 2020, this past week happened. It's one of the clearest expressions in my lifetime of the truth that human progress in history doesn't automatically evolve as a biological species evolves for the better. Freedom isn't achieved once and for all, but is the work of each generation. And if this past week, or the so-called Summer of Love, has disclosed anything, it's that freedom can't be identified with the ability to do anything, to make whatever choice you want. Freedom is dependent upon a manner of life resistant to tyranny from without and from within one's own heart. To borrow from Jonathan Sachs' research, this is what John Locke meant when he contrasted liberty, the freedom to do what we ought, with license, the freedom to do what we want. It is what George Washington meant when he said human rights can only be assured among a virtuous people. And Benjamin Franklin when he said only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. Or Thomas Jefferson when he said, a nation as a society forms a moral person, one living body, and every member of the society is personally responsible for his society. Lose morality, and eventually you will lose liberty. But whose morality, it will be asked? Again, George Washington points out the way in his farewell address. Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. And let us, with caution, indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principle. You see, the state, the nation, is basically divided into politics and the economy. The subprime lending fiasco and subsequent recession of several years ago, as just one example, makes it clear that the economy depends on something beyond itself. And politics, just choose from any number of recent examples to demonstrate the same thing. Politics has to do with leveraging power, and the economy with leveraging wealth. Neither are fit or designed to do what our increasingly secular country is asking them to do. Wherever you may fall on the political spectrum, if you're dismayed, and who isn't, here is something you can do to make things better. Just as the life of a family, of your family, obviously depends on a shared morality. A family can't survive if it's built on lies, power, wealth, and the like. So too does our society depend on a shared morality. Morality is the fabric that allows us to relate fittingly with one another, with trust and respect. And at the very least, essential figures of our past point to the irreplaceability of true religion as the fount out of which morality springs. Be faithful Christians. Be intentional about your religion. Don't take it for granted. And don't attempt to believe or be moral on your own. Which brings us finally to today's feast. The baptism of Jesus is an event indicating that we human beings are not all right, and that we can't make ourselves all right on our own. It's an event indicating that we were alienated from the source of our identity, from truth and goodness itself, and therefore alienated from one another. God's becoming flesh in Jesus at Christmas, and Jesus' participation in a ritual act of washing, reconciliation, and new life signifies this. God has overcome our alienation and identified himself with wayward humanity, leaving us with the same ritual of baptism as the way for all human beings to be reconciled with God and one another. If you have been baptized into Christ, you are a new creation, St. Paul wrote. You have been reconciled with goodness and truth itself, which is not only a definitive fact, it really did happen, just like the ritual in which you said, I do, is a definitive fact, and it really did happen, but it's also a mission calling us to make this fact our own by living this new life, just like the fact of your I do requires a living that out in your life. It seems to me that a good place to begin this mission anew is by admitting that we're not all right on our own, that we often don't see the whole truth and mustn't be quick to judge or to demand absolute adherence to our own politics and disengage with the other side. As God has reconciled hostile humanity to himself in Jesus Christ, seek ways to reconcile, to live with one another, which does depend on morality and religion, and therefore depends on the grace of God and each choice we make, either for or against freedom.